And I'd like to welcome everyone to the Montana Sportscast podcast, as I will talk with guests from around the state of Montana about high school sports. We'll try to have on at least 3 shows a week of different people throughout the state of Montana. And if you like these podcasts, please click on the subscribe button below, and you will get alerts when we have a new show come up on YouTube. And joining us today, we got Boomer Stan Ozark with us and
Hey,
talk a little bit of high school basketball.
yeah, let's do it.
All right. I'll turn you loose and let you
Okay.
go.
Well, I just was going to talk about a few games that I had this past weekend, and then some games coming up this week, featuring some teams that we've talked about in the past, and some games here in Eastern Montana in the 3C that I'll mention. I want to talk just a bit about this game from Saturday night. It was Glasgow Poplar girls. The Poplar girls ended up winning the game 51-49 over Glasgow. Glasgow came back from an 11-point deficit in the third quarter. Kind of the cool story here is, if you remember last week, I talked about an eighth grader that the Glasgow boys have. Well, the Glasgow girls also have their own eighth grader, Maisie Yoakum. And Yoakum's just been seeing more and more playing time. She hits a three-pointer with just, I believe, 12 seconds left in the game and is fouled. So she has a chance to make it a 4-point play. She's just an eighth grader. She goes to the free throw line. It's a tie ball game, and she has a chance to put Glasgow up by a couple with just a few seconds remaining. Well, unfortunately for Maisie and the Scottish, she missed the free throw, and then she committed a foul just a few seconds after that, which then sent Poplar to the free throw line. Emma Ray Martell hit a couple of free throws, and Poplar ended up winning that game 51-49. But for an eighth grader, pretty big moment for her on the stage at the free throw line to give her team a win. But it didn't turn out for the Scotties. The other part of this game, each team committed 38 turnovers, which made it for a very long game, as you can imagine. And Glasgow alone went to the free throw line 35 times. So those are the kind of games that will stretch your voice out a little bit, Bob, if you're doing play by play on.
Yeah, for sure. And there's boy, those are the toughest games to do, Boomer. We all know that. It's part of doing play by play is you've got to keep your concentration, and you got to get into a flow. And those type of games, boy, it's tough to do either one.
Well, and that's, if anyone's ever done play by play before, what Bob just said is so true. You have to get into a flow. In this game, there were so many turnovers to start things off. It was like you were never going to get into a flow. And it was finally in that fourth quarter when things started picking up a little bit. And it was actually kind of a fun game to do. Like I said, going down to the final seconds, and Poplar ending up with a 2-point win
Yeah.
over Glasgow. But still, yeah, with that many turnovers, each team 38 plus a lot of free throws, it makes for a long, long game for sure.
Yeah. Yes, it does. Yeah, it does. What else you got for us,
Well,
Boomer?
we're gonna coming up tonight, or not tonight, Thursday night. There's a District 3C game, and I want to touch on this just a little bit. A 3C boys game, as Nashua will host Luster. Now, Luster is the number one ranked team in the state. They're
Right.
unbeaten. They're getting a lot of publicity. I believe KRTV was even up into Luster this week. So Randy Redding and his Luster Lions are getting a lot of attention from even the statewide media at this point, and well deserved. They stayed unbeaten, and I'm not sure if they'll get knocked off during the regular season. But they're playing the Nashua Porcupines. And the point about Nashua, besides that I'm a graduate of Nashua High School, is that Nashua did something they hadn't done in years, and I haven't been able to track down how many years it's been. But they defeated Scobie last weekend. Scobie had put together such a long winning streak in the District 3C. It was Luster who finally broke that streak last year, and Luster's beat them every time since they broke that streak. But Nashua is the first team in the 3C other than Scobie, or other than Luster, to knock off Scobie. So Nashua will play Luster on Thursday, and I'll be broadcasting that game from Nashua. Unfortunately, these two teams played back before Christmas, and Luster beat Nashua by 50 points. So hopefully there's some improvement there, and I think there is for Nashua. They've got a young team They have a new coach. Travis Nielsen is the head coach for the Nashua boys now. Travis was the Glasgow girls coach for many years and now has moved on. He coaches the Nashua boys team. Travis's son, who's just a freshman, is Grady Nielsen. He is a 6'2" freshman, and he's getting up there into about 20-point a game territory for the Porcupine. So that'll kind of be a fun game to touch on Saturday, or on Thursday rather. And then another game coming up this weekend, North Country, the Lady Mavericks, they are unbeaten. They're the number one ranked team in Class C. And for girls basketball, they will host Circle on Saturday, and we'll have that game on the radio for you as well. Circle from the District 2C conference comes over. They have a record of 9-2, and right now they sit in first place in the District 2C. So this is going to be a good matchup. The two teams actually played earlier this year, and I believe it was before Christmas. Yeah, it was before Christmas, and it was about a 15-point win for North Country. So it's always interesting to see those teams meet up again after the Christmas break and see what happens. But the North Country Lady Mavericks on Saturday could be tested a bit, and I'm guessing Amber Erickson, the coach for North Country, is looking forward to getting a test for her team at this point.
So are they on their second round,
Yeah,
Boomer? They are.
this weekend, at least I can tell you for Glasgow for sure, they're getting into the second round. Nashua is
Second
getting
round.
into the second round, where you're facing those teams for the second time.
Second time. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. Basketball goes fast. We're already in the second round. It won't be long, and we'll be wrestling tournaments and basketball tournaments.
I think I looked at that wrestling schedule, and I think we're 3 weeks away from divisional tournaments.
Yeah.
Just a couple weeks left in the regular season, which is amazing, and that means that state tournament is just around the corner as well. So, and when that happens, then you're looking at district basketball. So, yeah, the season goes by really fast, and everything. So there's just so many games coming at once. It's tough to kind of put it all together for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. What else do you have for us?
Well, I know that you talked to Brenner Flayton, the athletic director for
Right.
Glasgow, about wrestling, and I just wanted to congratulate him for my part, and just give you an idea. He's the athletic director at Glasgow High School, and obviously I'm from Glasgow, but Brenner is the best. And how I always say this is, you don't know you have a good athletic director until you don't, and then it's like, wow, Brenner is so organized. He leads so many things at once. It's crazy. He is the best athletic director I've ever worked with. I've been doing this for 30 plus years. He's been in Glasgow for 9 years, and I value him every single day when it comes to that for sure.
Yeah, and I didn't really touch on it too much with him or at all with him, but he's got a big project up there for a new football stadium and several other things you guys have going on up there. Uh, do you know enough about that? You feel comfortable talking about, Boomer?
Yeah, I'm on the committee, but that doesn't mean I
Okay,
know
so we'll
anything.
let. Yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah. This is what Brenner and this committee has put together. It's called Scotty Field Recharged. It's a complete retrofit, if you will, of Scotty Field, the Scotty Field complex. It would involve a brand new artificial turf football field, new lighting, new scoreboard for the football field. There would be a softball complex built. Currently, the Scotty softball team, they don't have their own complex. They use the city of Glasgow's complex. This would build them up at the high school their own softball field, artificial turf with lights and all of that. And more importantly, because this is the biggest necessity right now in Glasgow at that complex, is the track. Glasgow is one of the first. Well, I know they were the first Class B school to have that all-weather track, but that was back in the 1980s. That track has deteriorated to the point that in the next couple of years, it's probably not going to be usable. So the plan is to build all new. At this point, it's either going to be an 8 or 10 lane track up there as well, surrounding the football field. It would also involve an expansion of the weight room at the Glasgow High School, right next to Scotty Field, and new concession areas and restroom areas as well. It's a huge project. It's a lot of money, and obviously, whether or not they can raise the money or put a levy out there to get it. But it's a grand plan that would put Glasgow right up there with one of the best facilities in the state of Montana.
Yeah, that's it's amazing. I use Hamilton for an example. Probably a better one at this point, a lot like what you're talking about, Boomer, is the one at Lockwood that they put in there.
Yeah.
They got artificial turf in their softball field, and of course the beautiful football stadium and track there as well. But yeah, those are diamonds in the rough, is what they are. They're just beautiful facilities when they're done, but there's a lot of work and a lot of organization and to make it happen.
Yeah, Glasgow's Glasgow's current complex is actually really nice. In the sense the stadium is. They have the cinder block grandstand, which you just don't find anymore. It looks beautiful, built in the early 1980s. If you look from the outside, it's like, boy, what a beautiful facility. But when you get on the field, I referee football, and it is the worst football field I officiate on. And what a shame that is in Glasgow. You have this really nice complex, and the football field, I think, has 3 different crowns on it. It is really, really bad, and if you talk to any of the coaches who come and play in Glasgow, they're just amazed at, how bad that field is, so that definitely needs to be replaced for Glasgow.
Yeah. Well, we kind of starting something new this week, Boomer. Kind of picking a couple players on a couple different basketball teams that you guys saw this week that don't get a lot of recognition. They're role players, and can you come up with a couple of games names for us there?
Well, I'll talk, uh, about the Glasgow girls because that's I did 2 Glasgow games this week
Okay.
or this past week. So I'll talk about Glasgow, and I talked to Coach Cami Graham this past Saturday on my sports show, and we talked at length about some of these girls that she has. One girl that's really kind of stepped up for her defensively is Brielle Partridge. Partridge is a senior for the Scotty girls. Brielle didn't play much last year on that state tournament team, but she steps up into a starting role this year and has kind of become a really nice defensive player for Coach Cami Graham. She said in the Harlem game, she stuck Brielle on their best score and held her to 4 points. So Brielle Partridge, just her first year really playing varsity basketball and stepping it up defensively for the Scotty girls. And then I'll mention Poplar because the Poplar girls, a solid contributor for them is Morgan Nordwick. Morgan Nordwick had 16 points in that game for against the Glasgow, and she is just a force inside and caused the Scotties a lot of problems. And she certainly will be in the running for some postseason recognition for all conference and the like. But Morgan Nordwick for the Poplar girls played an exceptional game against Glasgow on Saturday.
All right. I've got to look something up here. Get my handy dandy book out here to keep up with things. So, you talk a little bit about being a porcupine. I didn't realize it till this week that Luke Coker was a porcupine.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I just I didn't have any idea of that, and I didn't know that you were one until today as well. So kind of interesting, and I thought I knew everything, Boomer, but I guess I don't.
Well, this is how old I am. I was actually doing play-by-play when Luke was in high school. So that ages me because Luke's not a young man anymore. He's been around a while.
Well, we were talking, maybe you can answer this. I was going to go back and look, and I haven't yet at this point. I think Reed Point played Nashua in a state girls tournament in like 97, 96, 97, 98, somewhere in there. Do you remember that?
Was that in Missoula?
Could have been.
Do you remember? That would have been the
That
last
would have been
time.
that would have been the last time we played in the fall,
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, that would have been. that would have been the last time Nashua made the state tournament back then. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I don't know the exact year, but that would have been right. Yeah, I
Right in
think
there, huh?
I think they lost out in two. I'm sure your repoint team probably took it to them a little bit.
I think we did win it, but I don't remember.
Right.
You know, I'm probably older and more forgetful than you, so I we were kind of talking age at the annual meeting this past weekend, and Jim Baldwin, of course, I'm sure you know Jim. Uh, he came up and he says, you know, he said to me, he says, "I'm glad to see that you showed up. Now I'm not the oldest one here." and because I'm about 5 months older than Jim, and I said, "No, we're safe. We still got Bill Coulter showing up, and he's older than both of us." So,
Bill Coulter. Bill actually served as superintendent in Nashua for a couple of years.
yeah,
He
I
filled
did
in,
know that.
yeah, for and,
Yeah,
I've interviewed Bill a few times on the radio. He's a great guy to interview for sure,
yeah, yeah. We nominated him as being the oldest guy at the meeting this week. So
and still working probably,
yeah, he's actually he's superintendent at Terry this
of
year.
course.
He's what do they call that? Retired and rehired or something.
Yeah.
I'm not sure
Well
what it
well,
is, but
that's what he was doing in Nashua. He had been retired for a while then when he came to Nashua, and that was probably 4 years ago, 3 years ago, so
yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, Boomer. I
yeah.
appreciate it once again, and you
So
know,
next week or this next time we do it, I'll talk about Luster. I'll have seen them play against
okay,
Nashua. We'll get into that a little bit, and North Country versus Circle, that girls game. Those are a couple games to watch, which we'll both have for you, so we can talk about that when I'm on next week or next time.
The 1965 NCAA Track and Field Championships took place on the Berkeley campus. That same weekend, just 80 miles south in Sacramento, was a high school meet called the Golden West Invitational. At that high school meet, 18-year-old Bob Beeman went 50 feet 3 inches in the triple jump, a mark that would have won at the NCAA Nationals. Ron Freeman's 440 time would have been second, and distance runner Jim Ryan, who a year earlier had become the first high school runner to run the mile in under 4 minutes, would have also been second in Berkeley. At that same meet, Butte's Bob Hawk threw the discus almost 190 feet. Lucky for those college boys that some of the best track stars were still in high school.
and I'd like to thank our guests that come on the show and talk about Montana high school sports. Without them, this show would not be possible. And once again, if you like this podcast, please click on the subscribe button below to get alerts when we have up a new podcast.